Welcome back, design junkies, to Mechanical Engineering Made Simple.
Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most essential and maybe overlooked components in all of mechanical design: the spring. I mean, think about it. They're literally everywhere. And you know what? Understanding how to design them is a genuine superpower for any engineer or maker. So here's what we're going to do. We'll start with the big picture, the first questions every designer has to ask. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of coil springs, check out some other types, and wrap it all up with a super practical checklist you can use on your own projects.
All right, let's get into it. Before you even think about touching a calculator or a formula, a great designer starts by asking some really fundamental questions about what this spring actually needs to do.
And question number one is always this: where is this spring going to live? What's its working environment? Seriously, this is absolutely the first thing you have to nail down, because the answer pretty much dictates your material choice from the get-go. So, let's say your spring is going to be in a corrosive place, maybe exposed to salt water. Well, you're going to need something like stainless steel to fight off rust. Or what if it's in a super hot engine? You'll have to reach for a superalloy like Inconel that can take the heat without losing its strength. And hey, if you need it to conduct electricity, something like beryllium copper is your go-to, because it gives you both springiness and conductivity. And I'm not kidding. This choice is so critical. If you get this wrong, it doesn't matter how great your math is. Your design is basically doomed before you even start.
Okay, next question. How much space do you actually have? This is a huge one. This constraint isn't just about the spring's size and shape. It has a direct knock-on effect on your material choice and, you guessed it, the final cost.
Right, so if you're trying to cram a spring into a really tight spot, you're going to have to use a high-strength, high-performance material like music wire. Why? Because you need to store the maximum amount of energy in the smallest possible package. But on the flip side, if you've got plenty of room to play with, you can relax a bit and use more economical stuff like a standard oil-tempered wire. It's that classic engineering trade-off: performance versus cost.
Now, what happens when your spring can't just work once, but has to work millions or even billions of times? Think about something like a valve spring in a car engine. That's a whole different ballgame. Now we have to talk about designing for fatigue life.
So for these high-cycle applications, you really have to think about endurance. And one of the coolest tricks up a designer's sleeve is a process called shot peening. The best way to think about it is like this. You're essentially giving the spring's surface a suit of armor. You're blasting it with tiny metal balls, which creates this protective layer of compressive stress. This makes it way more resilient to repeated loading and helps stop tiny fatigue cracks from ever starting.
Okay, so we've covered the big picture questions. Now, let's zoom in and focus on the most common type of spring you'll ever see: the helical compression spring. This is where we can really dig into the core physics of how these things work.
All right, the first and most fundamental property of any spring is its rate, which you'll also hear called stiffness. It's super simple. It's just the measure of how much force the spring pushes back with for every inch you compress it. This number, right here, basically defines the entire personality of your spring.
So how do we control that stiffness? Well, this formula tells us everything. You can see it depends on the material, the number of coils, the diameter of the coils. But hang on, look at that D, the wire diameter. It's raised to the fourth power. This is, without a doubt, the most important thing to see on the slide. A tiny, almost invisible change in the wire's thickness has a huge exponential effect on the spring's stiffness. As a designer, that D is your most powerful tuning knob by far.
Okay, here's a cool little mind bender. When you push down on a coil spring, it feels like you're bending the wire, right? Well, you're not. You're actually twisting it. The wire is acting like a long torsion bar that's just been coiled up, and that twisting creates something called torsional stress. Managing this stress is absolutely crucial if you want to prevent your spring from getting permanently bent out of shape or just snapping.
And this is the math we use to figure out that stress. Now, I want you to pay close attention to that K term. That's called the wall factor. It's a super important correction factor because it turns out the stress isn't even across the wire. It actually concentrates and gets much higher on the inside of the coil. It might seem like a small detail, but believe me, ignoring the wall factor is a classic rookie mistake that leads to springs failing when they really shouldn't.
Okay, another key concept you have to know is the spring index. All it is a simple ratio: the big diameter of the coil divided by the little diameter of the wire. The best way to think of it is as the slenderness of the coils. And this one little number tells you so much about how manufacturable your spring is and how stable it will be in action.
See, if your index is too low, the coils are really stout or chunky. They're a nightmare to form and you get really high stress concentrations.
On the other hand, if the index is too high, the coils get all slender and skinny. They're prone to tangling up during manufacturing or even buckling under a load. So there's this design sweet spot right between about 6.5 and 10. Staying in that zone just makes life easier for everyone. It's easier to make, and the spring is just generally more stable.
All right, so we've gone deep on the classic coil spring. But remember, the whole idea of storing and releasing energy applies to a massive toolkit of other spring types. Let's broaden our horizons a bit.
You've got torsion springs, right? Think of a classic mousetrap. That's a torsion spring, and it works by twisting. Then you have flat or leaf springs, which are basically just flexible beams that store energy when they bend. You see these all the time on the suspension of big trucks. Now, the math for each of these is a little different, sure, but the fundamental physics, it's exactly the same. You're deforming a material, it's storing that potential energy, and then it wants to release it.
And check these out. This is where clever geometry really shines. These are called Belleville washers. They're basically cone-shaped discs that can handle absolutely massive loads in a really tight space. And the coolest part is you can stack them in all sorts of different ways, in series, in parallel, to get very specific and sometimes non-linear spring rates. It's brilliant.
Okay, wow, we have covered a ton of ground. So let's distill this all down. What are the key things you need to remember for your next design project?
Here are your rules of thumb, your design checklist. Number 1, material. Match it to the environment and the life cycle. Number 2, aim for that spring index sweet spot between 6.5 and 10. Number 3, and this is critical, keep your working stress below about 45% of the material's tensile strength for a standard compression spring. You get a little more wiggle room with torsion springs, maybe up to 75%. If it's a high cycle application, don't forget shot peening. And here's a great pro tip. If you ever nest springs one inside the other, always wind them in opposite directions. Otherwise, they'll jam up and bind. Seriously, follow these guidelines and you're building on a solid foundation for a great design.
And this quote just sums it all up perfectly, doesn't it? Designing a spring is all about the trade-offs. It's a puzzle where you're constantly balancing space against material, against stress, against life, against cost. And honestly, that's what makes it so challenging, but also so cool. So, what's the takeaway here? Now that you've got these fundamental rules down, you can start seeing opportunities everywhere. The next time you see a problem, a machine that needs a return force, or a device that needs to store energy in a tiny space, you'll have the tools to think, hey, maybe a spring is the answer here. So look around, spot those challenges, and start thinking about how this simple, elegant mechanical solution might be exactly what you need.